Welcome back to another edition of the Jigsaw Blogs audio commentary tracks where we take a look at episode 5, What's in the Box. I personally really love this episode because it's the first time we actually got to use one of our budgets that we used this year. We actually purchased some props from the Saw fan films that we get to use in the episode. And we've been building for these last few episodes, from episodes 1 to 4, what was in the box, what did the organ donor leave Mark, what did Mark send Jacob, and stuff like that. I'm very excited to talk about this episode, and let's just hop right into it. Okay, so I'm looking at the date right here. We're on November 9th, which is a couple weeks after, in the afternoon. So if Jacob's a teacher, I found it interesting based off an experience. I love the run shirt that I have right there, based off my track teachers right there. But yeah, we're back in the same place, episodes 1 and 2. Everything's still the same right there. I think this was filmed like in July or August, because I think this episode came out later on. I could be wrong, but essentially you see the box right in the far right corner. You see it there already. But it is very important for my character to talk about this story right here because, the character Jacob was suspended. He was not fired. He mentions right here that, his contract's not being renewed because the principal didn't like his methods of teaching. I'm sure there's parent complaints about, Jacob talked to her kids about the Jigsaw killer in classrooms and stuff like that. And this is kind of based off experience I've seen firsthand because I've witnessed teachers go through the same process that this Jacob character went through right here. Even I had to go through this process at one time because I knew I worked for a school district. I won't say where, but I knew my contract wasn't going to be renewed, and they just use ways it's just a way to process because, most teachers are not typically fired unless they do something really bad. It's like any other job where, if your boss essentially just doesn't like the performance you do or things they see in your classroom, they'll make mental points and they decide to the board whether they're going to recommend you to be rehired or not. And that's essentially what happened to my character here. So basically the principal just told Jacob flat out that they're not renewing your contract. Come February at the school board meeting. It's usually the month of February is when teachers get their contract renewed, usually February and March. And that gives teacher plenty of time. If they're not renewed in February and March, that gives them time to go through March and April to get rehired and go to another school district. So that was it. I felt important because, it's really authentic because this is what teachers do go through whenever they get released from a school district or just their contract's not being renewed. And like I said, it's happened to me once. And like I said, in my personal, I won't go into details of what happened there, but bottom line, it's a good, people do one of two things. Either you get fired from your job and you can just mope about it and move on and go into a new profession, or you just take your experience and learn from it. And thankfully, that's what I did with my experience. I think I was dismissed in 2017, and I picked up another school district. Thankfully, I've been working there for 9 years now, and it's been great. But on to the episode. Yeah, we're going to go right into what's in the box. 2 things in this episode. I really love the fact that this is the first episode where we get to really use the budget. I actually had to go on eBay and buy some of these props. The first prop you'll see right here is a tape recorder, and this was 2020 whenever I record this, and you can't just walk into any Walmart or Radio Shack. Is Radio Shack still open? I don't know. But yeah, I got the camera because you can't just walk in and buy those little cassette tape recorders. They don't make it anymore. You have to really go on eBay, and that's what I did. I went on eBay and found a version that will actually play live tape recorders. So I think I spent maybe $60 on the tape recorder and stuff like that, tapes. So I actually got the camera because some of the people in the comments mentioned in the videos was you should edit a little bit more. And that's kind of a little wink to the nods because, some people say if you edit more rather than just ramble, it just make things easier. So that's why I decided to do it with the camera right there. But yeah, it was really cool getting this thing online. Actually, of course, I played around with it. Of course, I used the Jigsaw voice. Of course, I did stuff like that because, you got to have fun because when you get little props like this, you just got to learn to have fun with it and stuff like that. So maybe one day I'll auction off the tape if anybody's interested. One day I'll probably auction it off whenever I'm done with it. But I think if we're going to do season 2, then I think we're going to definitely use this tape. Yeah, I love the tape recorder. I mentioned the line Pete Block on there. Yeah, pawn shop. Yeah, Constantine Avenue. That's a reference to Jason Constantine and Pete Block, producers of Saw. Jason Constantine just recently passed away, unfortunately, which that's a huge loss to the Saw family. So, but yeah, I had some fun right here. My character. So I thought, should I make a joke? Yeah. I love that. So you gotta have a little fun right there, because even though I thought, would the audience have that? I said, yeah, I think it's a fun one to have right to character. And of course the doorbell sound effect. Some people really freaked out when they watched this. They're like, oh no, don't answer the door, don't answer the door. It's a horror movie, don't answer the door, you won't be right back. This is Scream. A little wink to Scream right there. But yes, I do quick edit right there. 3 boxes. Yeah, Mark had 1 or 2, but you'll see why in a little bit. When Mark decided to send his box, there was a letter that Jacob gets from the organ donor. And I think at the time, because Spiral didn't come out, we didn't know who the organ donor was going to be. I think we wrote an idea for one character. I won't say what, because the season finale hasn't came out officially yet of who the organ donor is, but I think it's safe to say that William Shank could be a huge candidate for being the organ donor. But I just want to keep things under wraps because, I think he's a good stand-in character for the organ donor because he's mentioned in Spiral. Reminds me, that's what the original working title for Spiral was, the organ donor, and that was the name of the killer. And that's what the police are calling him in Spiral, but in edited footage, the William Shank killer was the organ donor. So he could be standing for the organ donor, but I could change the organ donor to somebody else if I choose to continue this in Season 2. That's a little wink to there for future plans. I actually got an envelope right there. And yes, on the envelope, if you actually freeze frame it, it does say, Metropolitan City and stuff like that with an address. I got an envelope right there. Yeah, I love how I keep going. Again, this is all one take. There was no quick edits or nothing like that. This is all one take, and I love how I'm doing a little bit better. I feel like I'm just not looking at the camera. One of the things people commented is Jacob. Shouldn't the Jacob character be smarter than this? Realize that the organ donor should be a killer and stuff like that. Keep in mind, the events of Spiral haven't happened yet. So this Spiral takes place a couple years later after the events of Jigsaw, according to this timeline I'm going with right here. And taking the camera, open the box. Again, this is before Spiral. It'll Spiral because I'm teasing the events of Spiral going forward. A little spiral symbol. And of course, my handwriting. But you could tell, handwriting's awful. But little Saw characters. Going to the envelope we got right there. These envelopes you could buy on Etsy. And what I did was I took, someone actually created props. And this is the other tape recorder I bought. I forgot about this one. This one I bought because it looks like the ones you see in the movies. But this one does not work. And the black one I bought does work. So I couldn't really press anything on there. That's why I made the comment. There's a tape player on there. And I love that the wax tape, that is actually the tape that was in John Kramer's stomach. So I will say that right. If those were wondering, when I say the line, there's a little bit of wax on here. That tape right there, that is in fact the tape from Saw 4 that Hoffman plays. So I take the tape out, and I put that tape in. Yes, this is the audio recording from Saw 4 that Jigsaw left Hoffman. But you'll see coming up right here all these photos. Again, this is from Etsy. I think I spent $100 on that. So I think the grand total, and this is on a school teacher's salary, folks, keep that in mind. The grand total on this episode that I spent was well over $200. So I spent literally over $200, and that includes buying the 3 boxes right there, which you could probably get at Walmart for $10. But yeah, I spent $200 on this one episode right here. So at the time, episode 5 is probably the most expensive. Love the pictures of stuff you can buy off Etsy, the letter, Eric Matthews, Hoffman, photos from Saw 4, I Know Who You Are letter, the Amanda letter, that's a big fat, Saw 6 letter, the photos that Adam took, that's pretty cool. The key, remember there's a key that Hoffman put in the envelope for Amanda in Saw 4. If you go back and rewatch Saw 4, that key in the envelope that Hoffman put in, there was a key before he got, quote, abducted by his own pig mask. There was a key put in that envelope that was in there, so that is the key from Saw 4. And yeah, that's a lot to take in, people. So we'll talk more about it next time. Take care, guys.